Welcome to the Office of the Leader of the Opposition press conference for the 12th of January 2023. Welcome. Today I'll introduce my panel from the right. To my right, there is none other than Ms. Amantha Walton Desir, Member of Parliament. To her right, the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Aubrey C. Norton, Member of Parliament. To his right, none other than Ms. Nima Flume Beth, Member of Parliament, and to her right, Mr. Elson Lowe, Economist. Welcome. Today's press statement will be read in two parts, and we will begin the press statement reading with Ms. Nima Flume Beth, Member of Parliament.
Thank you. Good morning. Mocha further exposes the government's callousness and the president's childishness. Kentu Mocha, which we have known as part of our ancestral lands, is an area of land that was occupied by children and grandchildren of retired cane cutters who used the said plot of land for cattle rearing. These families began living in this area approximately 30 years ago. At this location, a lot of community social activities took place, especially at Easter time. The Ministry of Housing, under the then Minister of Housing, Irfan Ali, now President, came and conducted a survey to start the regularization of these homes, and numbers were given. Residents were told by housing officials they should construct houses with stronger foundations, that they must turn their houses around since a road will pass behind. The residents followed all the guidelines and did as instructed. They also saved their monies since they were expected to pay the Ministry of Housing for the lands. On September 2nd, 2021, the new PPPC government scrapped that plan and told residents they will have to remove from the area because dust and noise from the construction will affect them. The ministry made a presentation stating that it will be a negotiated process and persons will be relocated. There were 35 households with 50 children. Subsequently, the Ministry of Housing sent in evaluators to value people's property and distributed application forms for house lots. Some residents highlighted that they had applied to the Ministry of Housing for over 12 years. They also collected biodata for the residents. They had a draft agreement circulating which they withdrew. The ministry began calling these individuals on a one-on-one basis and began making offers. A letter was written to the president on January 9, 2022, and he did not respond or engage the people even though he knew about the problem. Within the year, government began destroying people's property. In the circumstance, 28 persons began relocating. Many were disgruntled since they were not properly settled and their old homes were being destroyed. The remaining households, which had 12 adults and 20 children, were the persons who were self-employed in farming and selling. The government wanted them to sell their livestock and refused to properly engage the people to make them comfortable. Employees of the Ministry of Housing, mainly Mr. Aaron, would call these individuals and make offers. However, at meetings with his other representative, the offers would change. On January 5th, 2023, they destroyed the 7 families' homes and valuables by grading everything to the ground. They returned on January 7th, broke the pens with livestock and began dumping mud to bury them. They were also burying remaining building materials, making it more difficult for farmers to even use these materials to help themselves. The remaining persons were Joyanne Ellis, 7 persons in her home. She had cows, fruit trees, and also did some sewing. Junior Ellis had 9 persons in his home, owned about 30 head of cow, fruit trees, sold pepper, achar, etc. Candace Williams, 5 persons. Today makes 2 years since their mom has died and left them with that property. Mark Gordon had 4 persons in his home, 17 pigs with piglets, 75 piglets, over 20 ducks, layers, bearing fruit trees. He was forced to sell his 17 large pigs and some piglets for next to nothing because he would have lost everything. Chevron Eastman had 7 persons at her property, and she was a proprietor who wholesale products for banks DIH and Anson McCall. Tion Levy started his negotiation, but at that time it was incomplete. Had a bar and swimming pool business. Mark Hyman started negotiations but was not completed. He had his livestock, sold eggs, fruits, and vegetables. After the destruction of these homes, the Ministry of Housing officials began calling on the said day to make offers to 3 of the 7 families. After the destruction of these homes, then the president found his voice to speak, but could not engage these people for over a year. He did not even find it necessary on his visit to Mocha Arcadia community on 11th of September 2022 to visit this area or address the concerns of these people. After the destruction of these homes, the Ministry of Education visited to see the children who were affected. After the destruction of these homes, the Ministry of Agriculture called for a list of farmers and the crops and livestock they had. Had this been a negotiated process, all of this after action would have been done and the government would have ensured that these people are comfortable. Here is clear evidence that one Guyana is for one set of people. What Guyanese witnessed with shock was the callous action of the PPPC government in confiscating land and demolishing the homes of several families in Caneview, Mocha. The opposition continues to stand in support of the rights of these residents and to provide material assistance. Several party groups and members, both locally and overseas, have offered material and other comfort to the dislodged families. Our Social Welfare Committee, headed by the Vice Chairman, Elizabeth William Niles, has been in the forefront of these humanitarian efforts. We will continue to support. The actions of the PPPC government amounts to crime against humanity. We call on the local and international women's rights and human rights organizations to join in strongly condemning these crimes. The government's various claims were flat excuses and blatant lies. Guyanese have rejected the government's assertion that these families must be relocated because they are in the way of a proposed Eccles to Great Diamond Highway. It is clear that this road will pass a significant distance from these properties, and the real motivation behind these demolitions appear to be serve the interests of the business friends, families, and favorites of the PPP. The next coalition government will not recognize such land titles granted to these persons by the PPPC. Guyanese have also rejected the government's claim that it's held genuine consultations with the residents. As the Starbuck News editorial of 6th of January correctly noted, after the first meeting, the community was promised more, but none came. As related, the tactic was to contact individuals, inviting them to come into the ministry, an invitation which many disregarded, and it is on that its assertion about engagements are based. The method is clear. It is easier to undermine a group stance and persuade people to take a certain course of action if they are dealt with on an individual basis rather than if they are dealt with as a whole. Guyanese have recognized that many families have been living on these ancestral lands for decades. The land not only provided their homes, but also their livelihoods. These are real people whose lives are upended by a vicious and vindictive government, whose president only wanted to show that he is a strong man. Such childishness is dangerous and must be condemned by all decent-minded citizens and organizations. The people of Guyana will not forget Mocha.
The PPP is sidelining Guyana's constitution and parliament in funding the Wales gas shore pipeline from cost oil. The government of Guyana has indicated its intention to fund the acquisition of a stake in the Wales gas ashore pipeline and eventually full ownership of the pipeline from the PSA with ESSO. Such funding and procurement arrangements raise serious legal and constitutional red flags, a matter on which we here wish to alert the Guyanese people. If the pipeline is intended to be government-owned, national infrastructure, it must be financed through the national budgetary process. This process allows the existing oversight bodies to carry out their functions. First and foremost, the National Assembly, but also encompassing the Public Procurement Commission, Auditor General's Office, or Public Accounts Committee. Funding such national infrastructure directly from cost-style arrangements in the PSA sidelines these institutions, which are constitutionally mandated to ensure national discussion, public accountability, and transparency. It is vital to draw a distinction between the offshore FPSOs, which ExxonMobil and its partners own, and a natural gas pipeline that the government of Guyana would own. If Exxon develops a pipeline that it owns and then cost recovers that pipeline, it is within its rights under the PSA. This is exactly the same process we see currently with the FPSOs. On the other hand, if the government of Guyana seeks to acquire that pipeline from Exxon, whether in whole or part, it must approach Parliament for funding. Direct cost oil funding opens up the possibility that under the PSA, Exxon could be empowered to construct a wide variety of government-owned and operated public infrastructure projects, from roads to wharves, completely bypassing Guyana's existing laws and constitution. Given these grave concerns, here are some key points that need to be urgently addressed. 1. The government must immediately make public the agreement it has made with ExxonMobil for this pipeline, in whatever form it exists. 2. The government must immediately make public the agreement it has made with ExxonMobil for the supply of natural gas, in particular as it relates to the price at which the gas will be supplied. 3. The government must state what law allows it to bypass the Natural Resources Fund Act and Consolidated Fund in this way. 4. The government must state what procurement procedures ExxonMobil will use in building this pipeline. 5. The government must state what law empowers Exxon to procure in a way that is not monitored by the Public Procurement Commission, which is also a constitutional body. 6. The government must state the interest rate that Guyana will be charged by ExxonMobil for funds used to construct this pipeline. 7. The government must state whether this project would create a contingent liability on the government of Guyana if Exxon is unable to repay its creditors. 8. The government must state the source of ExxonMobil's financing and what the terms and conditions of that financing are. And 9. The government must state the final cost of the pipeline and what provisions exist to finance cost overruns should they occur. We have tabled some of these questions in the National Assembly in the name of our Member of Parliament, Walter Lawrence. Further, we intend to table a motion for the National Assembly to call on the government to release all contracts and agreements on the project, and for the parliamentary sectoral committees on natural resources and economic services to jointly review them in the public's interest. If this move by the PPP is not nipped in the bud, it opens the door to hundreds of billions of dollars being continuously borrowed and spent on national infrastructure projects unlawfully and unconstitutionally. Moreover, Guyana would be saddled with cost oil bills that severely restrict the size of the NRF and the nation's ability to spend on health, education, and a wide range of public services. This is exactly what Hugo Chavez did in Venezuela, asking PDVSA, the state-owned oil company, to fund his Misiones programs. These programs were awash with corruption, drained the nation's resources, and helped ensure Venezuela's sovereign wealth fund only had 3 million US in its accounts as of 2021. If national institutions are bypassed, it doesn't matter how much oil a nation has. It can all turn to tragedy in a heartbeat. PDVSA is notorious for not publishing financial reports. And as it stands, not only are we yet to see the audit of Exxon's $7 billion USD cost recovery bill, we are yet to still to lay eyes on the audit of its over 400 million USD pre-contract costs. All right-thinking Guyanese must make it clear to the government that a single dollar must not be spent, much less billions upon billions, without the approval and oversight of Parliament. Guyanese need to recognize that this project is in the hands of the Bijagio, who is accused of bribery and corruption, and has not been involved in one successful major project in his disastrous political career. Therefore, there is great reason to have concern that we will have another failed project with substantial corruption.
Thank you. At this time, I will take questions on the press statement. All right, as customary by raise of hand. Mr. Adam Harris, I see your hand.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, all. My little daughter there at table there, a very good morning to you too. CEO Racket and Mocha. I'm very, very interested in Mocha. Two of the names that MP Fubes called were my relatives, the Ellisons. And we talk about people losing property or demolishing and make a mess of their property, their assets, their earnings. Is there a law that allows these people to recover those things as a result of willful destruction? I don't know.
Thank you for that question, Mr. Harris. Certainly, there are a number of causes of action that we are aware that are available to the displaced Mocha residents who had their properties destroyed. I believe that in the coming days, the courses of action that they will take will become public, but I do not want to speculate very much at this juncture. What I will say is that there certainly is redress available to the displaced residents at law.
And if, Tamika just now, if I may ask again, one day after the demolition, people from the Ministry of Education went in to talk about children must go to school and all of that. Can anyone say where these school children are housed?
Yes, these children are housed at their relatives. I think about 5 of the children are out of the community. They have to be taken to a farther location at some aunt or cousin to stay at. And the others are in the community at different families' places. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. I see the hand of Ms. Garnett.
Good morning, everybody. It's Nika Garnett from the Guyana Chronicle. My question is also about the Mocha situation. It's being maintained that the lands are ancestral lands. Can the opposition say why then processes weren't initiated since prior to the situation getting to where it got? Why certain processes, particularly legal processes weren't initiated since before. Why? Because the Ministry of Housing has been speaking with the residents since last year. The opposition is claiming that it's ancestral lands. The government is saying that it's government reserve. So why wait over a year now? And the process, the government is maintaining it was reserved to the point where they demolished the properties. Why wasn't legal proceedings or better action taken since prior to all of this if the opposition is maintaining that it's ancestral lands and it was gazetted and all of that, and they're on the right side of it?
Well, first of all, let me say that we were engaged with the community in Mocha. The assumption was made that the government was a reasonable government and that people would have been engaged, and therefore there would have been some kind of an amicable situation. I must state that we have always been collecting material for legal action, and that action would come. But I don't think what was anticipated was that the government would have been so brutal that even with children in buildings, etc., that they will bring a HIMAC, destroy property, etc. What it does is signal to us that in future one cannot assume that the government is rational, and one doesn't know if legal action was taken. Even if it was, the government would have abided by it, even with its history, based on its history.
All right, thank you. Any other questions on the press statement?
Yes, sorry.
Yes.
I'll have Mr. Shamal go. Yes, yes.
But Mr. Norton, to what extent did you feel that perhaps legal action in the forum state would have been able at least to forestall any sort of demolition and give at least some breathing space? I know you said that you, based on track record, you're not too confident that the government will not have gone ahead, but at least trying to take that legal action and see whether you could have had some sort of injunctive relief while probably negotiations continue to see if you could have gotten a better arrangement.
We had always contemplated legal action. We were in constant conversation with the persons in Mocha. We actually sent in lawyers who spoke with them, etc. But there was also a feeling among some of the residents that there will be a resolution, and we were acting in keeping with our consultation with the residents rather than on our own accord. But the option was always placed to them.
Thank you.
Friend, now my question. And I'm a very peaceful person. Currently, I saw that you have been described as weak, and therefore the government is doing as it pleases, having no fear of any reaction. Have you been approached by any section of your party or by anyone to be militant?
Well, I don't know what is meant by being militant. We thought from the inception, when I became leader of the opposition, this issue was already there. While I was executive director to the then leader of the opposition, we had already engaged them. We were talking about the legal approach, etc. No one approached me to say we need to be more militant. Sometimes I stay away from these concepts. Look, what the government or what some people are doing, we have to look at. In 1997, we were involved in protests. wide-scale protests. In that process, the government was able to describe us as thugs, young Turks, all kinds of description. Some of the very people that are talking about militancy now were making the same comments. Now, in this era, I don't recall anybody calling us to say, be militant, and us deciding what militancy means. What I can say to you is that in my discussions with the people in Mocha, there were some among them who felt that that is probably the way to go. So that is where it is. But for a lot of the commentators online, etc., many of them, we need to look at who are at home and who are at abroad. Because a lot of people abroad will say, oh, be militant, do this, break up the country, etc. But we have got to engage our people in Mocha and work with them to decide what is best for them. Militancy in itself, without clear objectives, won't achieve much.
Thank you. And I'm still taking questions on the press statement. I see the hand of Mr. Mark DeCosta.
While you wait, Mr. DeCosta, Mr. Norton, what legal action now will provide?
What legal?
What do you expect legal action post-demolition will provide?
I would wait until the action is filed, the team continues to work, and once it is filed and we decide the direction, then I will comment on that. To comment on that now is to preempt and to probably put the lawyer's approach in a position where they don't want to be.
All right. Any other questions on the press statement? I see the hand of Mr. DeCosta, but for some reason his mic is still muted. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you now.
Okay. The Costa Village Voice News. I have two questions, basically. MP Coretta McDonald on Norman Bung's program on Tuesday had said that she is of the view that an investigation into allegations regarding the check signing issue should be opened within the party. Would you, Mr. Norton, please say your position on that? And secondly, has the party to date appointed an auditor in accordance with Section 16.4? If so, who is the auditor? And if not, why not?
If I
All right, Mr. DeCosta, we're still taking questions on the press statement. I'll make a note of the questions and we'll get back to it shortly.
Thank you so very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions on the press statement?
I hate to dwell on this, but for MP Lucas, when you became aware that the heavy equipment was moving into the area, when I say you, I don't mean you personally, the community. The heavy equipment was moving into the area. Did you consider blocking it or some form of action? Yes, the police were there, but they were also there in Linden.
Let me answer.
So that people decided this ain't gonna happen. Were the people mobilized to prevent that equipment from going further?
First of all, the equipment was on hand. Some people, they do not understand the geography of what would have happened. You have this strip of land in which the equipment is there, and therefore there is no mechanism for you to block it. It's not like the equipment has to come on the public road and then go to the land. The second point that needs to be noted, the equipment that was used was not, though it wasn't the workers of the company, it is alleged it's either a worker from public works or housing, they would normally bring and put in that vehicle. Now it should be noted that the people had blocked it before, and what they did was to break down all the bridges so people couldn't get on the land. So the question of blocking the equipment was always a difficult one after the first time when it was blocked, and measures were taken to ensure that people cannot get on the land. If maybe you want to add anything?
Added to that, if you were following the events leading up to this, I don't know the word demolition sometimes hurt my head. Yes. After the leading up to the breaking down of those homes. Prior to that, you would see on several occasions I would have been there and we would have stopped some activities from happening on the land.
I think it's important that we add as well that the police, there was a heavy police presence there on the ground, which, from what we understand, it was intended to restrain the residents from having any interaction with the demolition crew, as we call it. I think it's very important, members of the media, that we continue to focus on what has happened. The reality is that the government of Guyana used the state machinery, the police force, heavy equipment against citizens of Guyana who were still engaged in negotiations with them. And we must never lose sight of that fact. And sometimes I think the line of questioning, we have to refocus to understand that people's lives were disrupted, their children's lives were disrupted, and we must hold the state accountable. So I just wanted to reiterate that we have to continue to focus on the tragedy that has happened. It has happened, people's lives have been disrupted, and I think going forward we have to continue to explore all avenues available to bring redress to the affected residents.
I also want to point out that future struggles are informed by past struggles. We saw in Linden a few years ago the police preparedness to slaughter 3 citizens of Linden. And a lot of the people who talk about militancy got nowhere close to condemning the police and to taking the actions that are needed to ensure that the police understand that what they did has consequences. While I am prepared to be militant and I am prepared to lead people into protests, I think we have to be strategic, and we do not want a situation where unnecessarily our people are murdered. I believe that this government is seeking to do things to ensure that there's a clash between the African Guyanese and the Indo-Guyanese, a clash which they believe will serve their interests. We will, in a sensible way, be militant, protest, do what we have to do, but we are not prepared to just put people's life at risk. And I urge a lot of people who talk about the Mocha situation to understand that Mocha is virtually an isolated community off of the road. And there are some disadvantages when you're dealing with armed forces, when a community is isolated. Even though people were mobilized and were on the streets, it is not the kind of area that you will get thousands of people into. And there are some other forms of action which could be taken, but which should not occur, will not occur in Mocha.
Thank you.
Mr. Lorna, is it
Mr. Shabral, one moment, please. I'll give you an opportunity after, once we're still taking questions on the press statement, I'll take Ms. Garnett, who has had her hand up for a very long time.
Thank you so much. I have two questions. Again, we're still on the Mocha situation. Ms. Amanda just said that the residents were still in negotiations with the Ministry of Housing. However, the Ministry of Housing is saying or said that the residents put out their demands, which included demanding cash as much as 100 million. Four persons demanded 100 million. Another person 150 million. One person's 45 million. The Ministry of Housing, from their part, is saying that the negotiation remained at a loggerhead. And we had seen videos from the Mocha residents that remained as well, that nothing was moving forward. It's at the demolition that day, and at least one person who claimed that his house was destroyed with the cows was maintaining that he was demanding $100 million from the Ministry of Housing. Did the opposition ever feel the need to go in and mediate on that situation in any way in terms of finding a middle ground with what the residents were demanding and the Ministry of Housing saying this is what we were offering? Because I'm guessing the opposition is saying that negotiations were ongoing, but the Ministry of Housing is saying the residents did not want to negotiate. They were holding firm that they wanted this 100 million, this 150 million, and that the Ministry of Housing was just left without a way forward with these remaining residents, the 7, after the other 28 had already accepted and moved on.
I will answer it.
And my second question is...
Could I deal with the first? Could I deal with the first?
Answer that one
and then we will come with the second. As leader of the opposition, a member of parliament was identified to speak with the Minister of Housing about negotiations, even at the last moment. And the Minister of Housing position was they were not prepared to engage with the political opposition. If they were engaging with individuals. And that has been the strategy of the PPP, to want to engage with individuals and not, because I even said we are prepared to find counsel for them to go with counsel, even if they didn't want the opposition. They weren't prepared for that, and they were hell-bent in one direction. So attempts were made. As it relates to 100 million and 150 million, I assume you understand the basics of negotiations. In negotiations, both sides make the offer. If you look at collective bargaining, for instance, a union might know it cannot get 25% increase, but it puts it at 25% increase. The other party, the employer, will know that they can't give 2% because it's too small, but they put it at 2%. And then you negotiate from there to find a solution. That is my understanding of how negotiations go. So the figure that was called should not have been something to say no to negotiation. It is your starting point. And then when you are negotiating, you arrive at compromise and consensus. That is my understanding of how negotiations should occur. In the very first meeting, the government could have been able to say, hi, 150 or 100 million is too much, and you move from there.
I want to add a little. Added to what Kamadidi was positive. There's one of the individuals who was affected from the home being broken. He negotiated or agreed to the $3.4 million that housing said they would have paid him for his property so that he could start building at another area. However, when he collected the money, started building, only 50% of the home was completed. So May month, he went back to housing and told them that the money cannot complete the home. So he has to remain in this old home. You know what housing told them? They will send a contractor to complete the home. Do you want to know when the contractor went? Only December of 2022. Sheldon was in his home with his 3 daughters when they broke down his house. He was right in the house. Should he have suffered that fate when he already accepted what was offered to him and recognized that it could not complete his home? He had to be there waiting. Now you know what housing had to do? They got to rent a house to keep him until the house is completed. But again, that transaction started since last year. Since last year, May, he told them that the house could not have been completed with that money. And that's the situation we have.
It should also be pointed out, a lot of people who stayed recognized that what the government was offering couldn't, apart from give them a house, it couldn't cover them moving, it couldn't compensate, there was no compensation for the moving, etc. And so one has to recognize that housing was very arbitrary and appeared to be seeking to impoverish people rather than help them to develop.
I want to make an additional observation on this issue, because I think very often in this case we fail to see that these are people with specific concerns, and one displaced resident, their concern is different from another. And so these are not just nameless faces, but these are people with actual lives and real stories. So for the government to say that negotiations would have come to a standstill, one has to consider a number of factors. The first one being that by their own admission and by their own recognition that these residents were not directly in the path of the road. So their presence on that portion of land did not in any way disturb the construction of the road. And I think it has to be made very, very clear. Having said that, it meant that there was time to come to a negotiated settlement. The other myth that has to be dispelled is that these people would have declared that they are not moving. I think by now the public understands that there was a process that was ongoing. I will give you one example because it is present in the spreadsheet that the Ministry of Housing has used to justify its position that these people did not want to be removed. And that is, you look at Miss Lovetta Doris, who, you know, coincidentally today is the date of her 2nd death anniversary. They still have her name there, present as the party that they're negotiating with. The fact of the matter is that they have been speaking with the family. And because she is deceased, they have put the children through a process engaging the public trustee. If you look at the note, you will see that they're saying the matter is in court. Because it is on the state's advice that they have been going through the public trustee process as recently as 1 week before their house was demolished. What is the justification for proceeding with that course of action? When you are engaging them, you are taking them through this legal process that you've advised them that they have to go through to get the public trustee involved, and you demolish their homes. And so to place the burden, as sometimes I believe we are doing, on residents, when they're dealing with a state who in the first instance should have made sure that they are properly legally represented so that the state does not stand accused of having an unfair advantage in the process. Secondly, there clearly was not a holistic approach to the relocation of these residents, because it was only after we appeared in our programs and said, look, The Ministry of Education has not engaged these children. Their school clothes has been bulldozed and destroyed. That the Ministry of Education went into the community the following day. The Ministry of Social Services, for example, has not provided any counseling to these children who have been affected and the residents. And so I believe that we have to take this matter holistically, and we have to, and you as the media, you need to go behind the propaganda that this government has been portraying. 4 of the 7 squatters, they said, accepted offers. We are on the ground in Mocha. You ask, the people are like, but we have not had that interaction with housing. They have not said any such thing to us. And so you have a government propaganda machinery that is on overdrive, as if anything that they could possibly say could justify what they did to the people of Caneview. There's nothing that they can say that would justify that treatment to Guyanese citizens.
Thank you.
Next question. Is Mr. Norton, given how this has played out, and you're saying that you delayed taking legal action and all of that, and with getting the person's legal counsel, and the criticism that you're now facing over the handling of the situation, do you have any regrets for how you, as the leader of the opposition, handled this situation and how you went about guiding others throughout this situation? Do you have any regrets?
On these issues, I am guided by the lawyers as early as, from the time I became leader of the opposition, the information were with the lawyers. It is the lawyers who will determine whether they take legal action, not only on this issue, on all the issues. And I have no regrets. My regret is that it's an uncaring government that doesn't care about human beings and would take a HIMAC and break down their houses, destroy their livestock, and that worries me a lot.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Norton, did you expect more people from Mocha in addition to the unaffected residents? Did you expect even the unaffected residents to come out and give you more bodies out there, as you said, boots on the ground, when the demolition was taking place? Secondly, who was the member of parliament that was delegated to interact with the government?
I'm not prepared to tell you who's the member of parliament that was delegated, but
why not?
Because I don't think I need to. Why do I? Give me the reason for saying who is the member of parliament. Of what value will it be if I tell you who is the member of parliament?
Of what value will it be for you to withhold the information?
I'm not withholding information. Our members of parliament, one of them was selected by me. He spoke with them, he got back to me, and we spoke in confidence. If the matter goes to court, or when it goes to court, that will become part of the evidence, etc., and that member of parliament would be known.
Okay, and in terms of the...
Or you could, or if you want, you can ask the minister, if he cares to say, which member of parliament spoke with him, if you want to confirm that he was spoken to.
And what about support from the wider local community? Did you expect more people to come out and be there?
I will put it this way. The people in Mocha have been sensitized. They knew. Many of them came out. But let us not forget, they come 1 in the morning. Yeah. And then sometimes 5 in the morning. Add to that, that they have driven fear in this entire society. Sometimes we miss that the PPP rule by fear. But from what I saw, a lot of the, and I was there, a lot of the residents came out. The people there. Now recall that a lot of people in Mocha are government employees, and with the vindictive nature of this government, some of them might only have to stand up out there and the next day they are fired.
Thank you. All right. At this time, I do believe, as we're coming down to a close of today's press conference, we will open the floor for questions outside of the press statement.
Ms. Norton, what's your reaction to the motion, no confidence motion that has been dispatched by the Florida chapter?
First of all, as far as I know, the party group in Florida, and I spoke with the vice chair, the party group in Florida never met and passed any no confidence motion. That's the first point that needs to be made. So it does appear to me that this is a public relation stunt. The second point I want to make is the party constitution is clear on how you deal with leadership. A party leader is elected for 2 years. There is one provision in the Constitution that for a special Congress. Now remember, party leader could only be moved or placed there by the Congress of the party. So if it was a serious attempt to have no confidence, then people would have gone to the Constitution and did what the Constitution says. The Constitution says you must mobilize 2/3 of the party groups in support of calling a special Congress. And once the special Congress has been called, then there will be an election. So the party constitution states clearly how this should be done. The other thing is we have to recognize that time has to be given for some people to heal. We have had a Congress. The present leader won overwhelmingly. I have attempted to engage persons who even didn't support me as party leader, and I will continue to work with our party to build it. I recognize that there are some who would go down the road they went and purport to have moved a motion of no confidence in the leader.
Mr. Norton, so then what happens with this document that was circulated to the CEC? Would it be discussed, or would it just be ignored in light of what we pointed out here as regards the constitutional provisions?
If a motion comes from any party group in the proper way, meaning the groups meet, discuss, and pass a motion, it is important to note that NAR, the governing body in the United States, made it clear that it wasn't their motion, they were merely passing it on. Now, there was no meeting of the group in Florida, and the two persons that signed, I think, is Laurie London, and I don't remember his name, but both persons are linked to certain sections in the party, for the want of a better word, and they have a right to do that. But if it is to occur, it should occur within the party rules. The party rule says for a group to meet, it must have a quorum. A quorum is 7 members. And as far as I know, no 7 members of that group met and passed any motion whatsoever.
Perchance, could you say how many members make up that chapter?
I'm not disposed to telling you the party's internal business. How do I tell you how many members? It's like you asking me how many members I have in Albister, how many members I have in South Rheinveld. I'm putting in the public domain the strength of our party. I'm not prepared to do that.
One moment, please. There was a question from Mr. DeCosta.
What was the question from?
Mr. DeCosta, are you there? You
Can
can.
we repeat it?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, Member Father Coretta McDonald, Inspector McDonald, on the Norma Brown's Voices of Diaspora program Tuesday, had said that she is of the view that an investigation should be launched to what took place with the treasurer and the signing of the blank check. I would like to know, sir, what is your position on that? And secondly, I was asking if today an auditor has been appointed in accordance with the party rules, and if an auditor has been appointed, would you reveal who that auditor is, and if not, why not, sir?
Okay, first of all, on the auditor, the party constitution states that if you're going to appoint an auditor, you must appoint it at the first General Council after Congress. Now, we have had many auditors, and if the party doesn't make a decision to change the auditors, you don't have to appoint a new one. The present auditor that has been identified by the party and continues to be the auditor of the party until probably the central executive make a decision to change is Nigel Hines. What's the other question? The auditor and, investigation. I've said at this press conference that I did accept the view, and it was true, that the treasurer signed blank checks and leave them because he is in Corriverton, and that at the point where the check will actually be utilized, all the documents go to the second signature. I did point that out. Now, as it relates to if there is going to be an investigation, the matter will be placed before the central executive at our meeting next week, and it will be dealt with.
Thank you. All right, I see Ms. Garnett. I guess this is going to be our final question. Or Mr. Adam Harris, are you raising your hand? All right, I got lots of raised hands now. Ms. Garnett. You can go ahead.
May I ask one more question?
One moment.
Okay.
Mark the question. May I ask one more question, ma'am?
One moment. I'll take the questions in the order I'm seeing the hands raised, and note that these are our final questions. Ms. Garnett, you may go ahead. All right.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. The audit, Mr. Norton today, he said that the auditor remains the same since it hasn't changed. Can you say when the party's finances were last audited and when they're scheduled to next be audited?
I consider
any period where there wasn't an audit, if that will still be covered?
I consider that to be the internal business of the People's National Congress reform.
But given the accusations by the treasurer and the perception and the image that the party now has in the public sphere as it pertains to the need for accountability and transparency in finances, don't you feel the need to at least put word out there on whether or not an audit is going to be done, or how the party is moving forward in being transparent and accountable?
Your question, that was not a question you asked. The party is always prepared to audit its accounts. The party, when I became leader of the party, our accounts were not computerized. We have completed computerizing them, and our accounts will be audited. And I may submit to you that our party has had a history of preparing audited accounts but not circulating it in the public domain, and we will continue to do that. And I think we're in a better position to be accountable because for the first time in the history of the party, our accounts are computerized.
All right, thank you. Mr. Shabal?
My question wasn't completely finished.
You
Can I
asked
go
one.
ahead?
You asked one question already, and I'm really trying to wrap up. I have a long list of hands here, Miss Garnett. Mr. Shabal, you're next.
Mr. Norton, briefly, what would you say are your major achievements now that you have been in the seat of the leader for 1 year now?
What have been my major achievements?
Yes, sir.
Many. One, I've restored education and training in the party, which was not occurring for a while. Two, I just said to you, we have computerized our accounts, etc. Three, we have been moving around the country and forming party groups and being very active in communities. Four, we have reestablished our social service unit in the party, and that social service unit has been servicing our people, our supporters, and even non-supporters, and that was manifest in the case of Mocha. Another achievement, I think, we have been able to bring, well, from the inception, it was new young leadership. And we have brought in new young leadership, and in this process, the party has on the ground far more people doing political work. I consider that to be anybody who came to Congress Place before I became leader will know it was not a place that that you could be proud of. We have since refurbished and improved Congress Place to the point where we can host diplomatic meetings and all kinds of delegation, etc. Another achievement, when I became leader of the party, we had little or no PR. I think you will admit, while we are not at our maximum, at our best, we have improved our public relations considerably. Another significant achievement, when I became leader of the party, the international community was not engaging us. We have re-engaged and have been having proper meetings with the international community and outlining our position on a number of issues. I can continue. Of course, there are successes, but there are also weaknesses which we have analyzed and we will move to correct.
All right, thank you. I see
Mr.
that.
Norton, follow up, please, if you could allow me.
Mr.
In the
Shabal,
while you were
Mr.
campaigning
Shabal,
for the leadership,
Mr.
you had,
Shabal, Mr. Shabal.
yes,
Allow him, allow him,
Okay.
allow him.
Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mr. Norton. Mr. Norton, while you were campaigning for the leadership, you set yourself several objectives in the short term, such as the removal of the chairman, Claude Singh of GCOM, addressing the matter of the chief elections officer, opposed vehemently to the breakup of Region 4 by way of legislation. But we have seen, and also having a clean voters list and so on. But in large measure, these things that you had identified while you were campaigning have not been achieved.
Well, could I answer you? I have never said I will remove the chairman. I said we will campaign for the removal of the chairman. We continue to do that. We cannot say we will remove the chairman. We've said we'll campaign for a clean voters list. We will campaign for the removal of the chairman. We have been doing that. A campaign is not an event, it's a process. And it continues.
But but of course you did not get your way with the breakup of Region 4 because that still
Again, if you quote me correctly, when I first commented on the breakup of Region 4, before the actual legislation, we were told that it was going to be broken up and that Region 4 will not be one region. It means they would have been, what is now Region 4 would have become 3 regions. It turned out that that is not the case. What, as I understand it from the legislation, is Region 4 continues to be one region, but the sub-regional activities will occur in 3 sub-regions.
All right, thank you. I see the hand of Mr. David from Stabrook News.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're
Yes,
hearing
we are.
you.
Hi. Mr. Norton, can you comment? We have seen reports that Ms. Dawn Hastings would have been appointed as the new General Secretary of the So, and secondly, can you say too if what is the position with the party's treasurer if we had taken up the position or if you're on the search for a new treasurer?
Let me start with the party's treasurer. The party treasurer resigned. Then he sent a letter said he resigned. The party treasurer then sent another one saying he is withdrawing his, we call it, all of them were sent to the central exec. And when the central executive meets, it will deal with those issues. It is not for me to say anything else outside of that. Next week, Wednesday, our central executive committee will meet. And as it relates to the general secretary of the party, I've consulted with many people in the party, and I've arrived at a position of who will be the general secretary of the party.
Can you say what is the position?
What is the position? We will do a formal press release, and I want the person to be there when I am announcing it.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Miss-
My final question is, has there been any consultation with the Alliance for Change in regards to parliamentary seats and them breaking away from the coalition?
Well, I don't know what you mean by breaking away from the coalition. As far as I know, the discussion I had with the leader of the AFC is that we will continue to operate at the parliamentary level as the APNU AFC, and that we will work together. However, when it comes to doing party work, the AFC will do its party work by itself, and the APNU, PNC, etc. will do work by itself. Now that is what has been put to us. When our central executive meet, we will have more discussion on this issue and clarify further positions. But I did not receive anything which said that the AFC has broken away from the coalition. I can only tell you what was discussed with me, and what I just told you is what was discussed with me by the leader of the AFC, Mr. Kemraj Ramchitan.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Adam Harris, and then I'll take Mr. DeCosta as we close off.
Thank you very, very much. Comrade Leader, just now you discussed the issue with the Treasurer. I read a letter which suggested that the Treasurer claimed that his initial reaction was due to pressure. He didn't say pressure from where or what. And he claimed that he's rescinding his letter, what have you. Is there the likelihood that I could hear the word pressure forcing him to take the second position? And in your discussion, how clean, how open did he come with you to explain his initial reaction to leave?
All I would say is this. I discussed with the treasurer, asked to meet me. I met him. We discussed in a frank way, and I do not believe it is, how do I put it? I do not believe it is the best thing for me to say in the public domain what are the issues and how we approach it. We have the discussion, and I made my position clear to the treasurer. The treasurer explained his position, and the next time we talk about it is at the central executive of the party.
Thank you. All right, Mr. DeCosta.
Good. Thank you very much. This is my final question. Comrade Norton, would you say, okay, we know that January 16th is budget day. Could you say if the opposition had done consultations with let's say, NDCs, RDCs, municipalities, trade unions, private sector, civil society, actor, and other interested stakeholders with regard to the opposition's position on budgetary allocation for the coming year.
We had discussion with a white civil society group on all the matters. That is one. We did have discussions with the private sector. I wouldn't say on budgetary matters, but on general matters that would have informed our position on budget. We have always been in constant contact with our NDCs and RDCs. And I know particularly, not only did our RDCs that are controlled by the APNU have discussions, but they actually went into communities, obtained the views of people, and in presenting their budget to the ministry, it contained their views, the views of the people on these matters. So there has been some amount of consultation.
So was there consultation with ACTA?
Not to my knowledge.
All right.
Thank you, sir. That's
Thank you so much. That question will bring us to the end of today's press conference. And once again, I would like to thank the media personnel for attending our press conference, and thank you to our viewers for viewing. Do have a wonderful afternoon.